and touts the effects of programs like Gun Down, the 911 Block Squad. I'm sure you could reference some more. Yet, major violent crime statistically is actually up in recent years. We had 6 homicides since just Friday night, although to be fair, that number is trending lower than last year. So tell me this, in 60 seconds, how can you prove your plans and your programs are actually working?
The Crime Commission sends out a report, came out today as a matter of fact. Violent crime in the city of Memphis is down 4%. A lot of it depends on where you benchmark. If you benchmark from 2006, it's down even more. If it's year to year, it's down 4%. But that's not the big measure. The big measure, because we can split hairs on these numbers, is what kind of effective programs, and we know what does work. What does work is keeping children out, as opposed to what these gentlemen are saying, taking more of them in there. There's study after study after study. NPR just released it last week that the best way to increase crime is coming down with this, take every one of them into the court system. And all these changes that they're going to make, the city of Memphis cannot make those changes. That was the Justice Department decree. Yes, you can transport a child to juvenile, but they go through that 19-point check and they might not keep them. But on the front end, we've been able to show that the best remedy is prevention.
Your time. Thank you. The question's for Mr. Williams, and this is a question from a reader. We solicited questions for the past few days on our website. We got a bunch of them, so I'll sprinkle a few of them in here and there. This is from Quincy and Frazier. The Memphis Police Association, an organization of which you are the president, once erected billboards in Memphis claiming that the city is not safe and therefore visitors should beware upon entering. How does such an act promote economic growth in our city? Does it hurt the city's image? And I'll add my own addendum to it. This wasn't Quincy's. Do you regret being part of that? 60 seconds.
No, I do not. At that current time, I was the president of the Memphis Police Association, and my job was to advocate for officers. They had 4.6 taken from them.
That's right.
Their insurance had been increased almost 42% in 4 years. The insurance had went up. They had no other recourse. But I will tell you that after those billboards went up, I had businesses calling. And they said, Mr. Williams, what will it take to get those billboards down? And I said, get them to give us our 4.6 back.
That's right.
And they gave it back. And the billboards were down in less than a month. Sometimes drastic means you have to revert to drastic measures. Were we trying to hurt the city? No. But as the president of the police association, we stood firm for the officers in the city. And now I wish we had stood even firmer because we're losing qualified individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Your time is up.
That's right.
This is to Mr. Collins. Mr. Williams has said in the past that many officers have left the city as a result of the benefit cuts last year, essentially making the police department less equipped to attack crime in our city. Director Armstrong, I believe, said just this week that 5 or 6 officers per week are leaving the force. So I'll ask you this. How do you move forward and replenish the police force? 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, the council is moving toward a ordinance that will allow those officers who have applied for the drop program to stay on. That number will stay at 2092. What I've advocated for is to go a step further. We have 280 vacant police officer positions that are funded in this year's budget. Why not allow those officers that retired 6 months ago or a year ago come back to the force if they want to, as long as they can do the fitness and agility and the shooting. Because, number one, they're already under 65, so they're going to lose their health care, and that's why the administration tried to bring that back and amend the ordinance of the drop anyway. So it ought to be fair for those officers who came back. Number two, then we aggressively began to recruit new officers right here at the University of Memphis in the Department of Justice, headed up by Dr. K.B. Turner. I've spoken to them many a times.
Collins, your time's up.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Mr. Wharton on this, have the last few questions on this topic. Mr. Wharton, the Black Lives Matter movement has drawn the nation's conscience more than ever before on interactions between the police and African Americans. What steps will you take or are you taking as mayor to address that tension? 60 seconds.
First of all, I'll commit to keeping the calm, steady hand of Director Tony Armstrong, who has acquitted himself exemplary across the nation. He is a steady hand. He struck the right balance. And this is not the time to even contemplate changing, and I'll make that commitment right now. As I indicated to an earlier question, making certain that within the academy and within the assignments that our officers are properly sensitized to that. We will do studies to make sure that we don't see any patterns there in which there are there's racial discrimination in terms of who gets arrested or whatever. But it will be ingrained in the academy. It will be enforced from the top down, a proper sensitivity to cultural differences. That's what you have in a diverse community such as we have here. And the key thing is to make certain that the officers who, not intentionally.
Thank you. Your time's up. The last question on this topic, I'm going to ask Mr. Strickland to address that same question, if you will. You'd like me to repeat it? Sure. The Black Lives Matter movement has drawn the nation's conscience more than ever before on interactions between police and African Americans. So what steps could you take as mayor to address that tension in 60 seconds?
First of all, absolutely Black Lives Matter. And it's inexcusable and unacceptable for any police officer to treat another human being differently solely based on race. And we've, in Memphis, have had a fairly good history between the police department and the community. And I believe that you can have Blue Crush and community policing together. There's some myth out there that they're mutually exclusive. Community policing does work with interacting with the community. But let's go back to talk about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter when they're young and they don't have bad interactions with the police. We have to give these children hope, like the Boys and Girls Club. We have to revitalize our community centers. As a mayor, I will bring together private-public partnerships to put money into the community centers and give them programming and structure and help those young people develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland, and that is all for that